It was a bitterly cold January evening in Des Moines, Iowa. The kind of night when the wind rattles the old storm windows and the neighborhood seems frozen in time. Inside a modest two-story home at the end of Willow Street, Robert Miller, 67 years old, retired bus driver, grandfather of 4, was heading upstairs to bed. Robert never thought of himself as fragile. For decades, he was the strong one, the man who drove kids safely to school through snowstorms, the one who lifted heavy groceries from the car so his wife, Linda, didn't have to strain her back, the man who shoveled driveways, cleared gutters, and never once complained about the aches that came with age. But that night, as he climbed the staircase, something terrifying happened. Halfway up, his right leg buckled. His knee gave out with a sharp snap. He gasped and clutched the railing. His cane slipped from his hand and clattered down the hardwood stairs like a gunshot. His whole body shook, heart pounding against his ribs. "Robert!" Linda's voice echoed from the kitchen, sharp with panic. She dropped the dish towel she was folding and rushed toward the stairs. There he was, her husband of 43 years, frozen in place, gripping the banister, beads of sweat shining on his forehead. His face pale, lips trembling, his legs shaking like brittle twigs ready to snap. In that moment, Robert felt more helpless than he ever had in his life. Not when he first retired and worried about money, not even when he had his gallbladder removed at 59. No, this was worse. This was the fear that his own body was betraying him, one shaky step at a time. He had been taking magnesium every night for months, convinced it would stop his cramps, soothe his restless legs and help him sleep. Every article he read, every ad on TV, every health segment on the radio told him magnesium was the miracle mineral, the missing piece for seniors struggling with muscles. But standing frozen on the stairs, Robert realized the harsh truth. Magnesium wasn't working. His legs were getting weaker, not stronger. He looked down at his trembling knees and whispered, almost to himself, "Why can't I hold myself up anymore?" For a man who once carried his grandchildren on his shoulders, the thought was unbearable. That night became the turning point. The night Robert realized he couldn't ignore his body anymore. Something deeper was happening, something no supplement label or catchy commercial had prepared him for. To understand how Robert ended up frozen on the staircase, you have to go back a few years. Robert grew up on a farm in Nebraska. By the age of 14, his hands were calloused from baling hay, fixing tractor engines and carrying buckets of water for the livestock. He wasn't a bodybuilder, but he was strong in the way farm boys are strong, steady, durable, capable of working from sunrise to sundown. When he moved to Des Moines in his 20s and became a school bus driver, he carried that strength with him. Even into his 50s, Robert was the kind of man who never sat still. If he wasn't on the bus, he was in the garage repairing something, mowing the lawn or playing catch with his grandsons in the backyard. But around age 62, subtle changes crept in. It started with a dull ache in his calves after walking around the grocery store. He brushed it off as just age. Then came the lawnmower breaks. He'd mow half the yard, sit down on the porch with a glass of iced tea, and tell Linda he just wanted to enjoy the view, though secretly his legs were throbbing. At night, he began waking up at odd hours, clutching his calf in agony. The cramps came out of nowhere, like someone twisting his muscles into knots with a wrench. Linda would rub his leg while he winced and gasped, trying not to wake the whole house. During family outings, he noticed himself slowing down. At the zoo with his grandkids, he asked to sit on a bench while the others went ahead. At church picnics, he passed on the softball games he used to join. When Linda teased him, "You're just getting old, Bobby," he forced a laugh. But inside he felt something gnawing at him, a fear he didn't voice. Then came the doctors. At his annual checkup, Robert explained the cramps and fatigue. The physician nodded, scribbled a few notes, and said the words Robert hated most. "That's just age. Try some stretching. Maybe take magnesium." Magnesium. The magic word that seemed to be everywhere. In the waiting room, Robert picked up a glossy magazine with a bold headline, "The Miracle of Magnesium. The supplement seniors can't live without." It promised relief from cramps, better sleep, stronger muscles, all from one pill. A week later, Robert stood in the supplement aisle of his local pharmacy. Row after row of shiny bottles lined the shelves. He picked the biggest one, Magnesium 500 milliliters, for muscle and sleep support. $40 gone, but hope in a plastic bottle. He took those capsules every single night, sometimes with warm milk, sometimes with water. He told himself, "This will fix me." "This will get me back." At first, he convinced himself it was working. The cramps maybe weren't as sharp. He slept a little better, or maybe he just thought he did. But after 2 months, the truth was impossible to deny. The stairs felt heavier. His legs trembled more often. He shuffled across the kitchen floor instead of walking with purpose. And then came the embarrassment. One Sunday after church, while chatting with a neighbor, his knee suddenly gave out. He caught himself, pretending he'd tripped over a crack in the sidewalk. The neighbor didn't notice, but Robert felt the shame burn deep inside. Still, he didn't tell anyone. Not Linda, not his kids. He didn't want to be a burden. He told himself the same story countless men his age tell. It's just part of getting old. Everyone slows down. But in the quiet moments, late at night staring at the ceiling after another cramp jolted him awake, Robert admitted the truth to himself. This wasn't just aging. Something inside his body was failing, and magnesium wasn't the answer. And then came that night on the staircase. The night everything nearly collapsed. Literally. The night on the staircase was only the beginning. 2 weeks later, Robert experienced the moment that would change everything. It was a Sunday morning. The sky was gray, snowflakes drifting lazily outside the frosted windows. Linda had made pancakes, the smell of butter and maple syrup filling the kitchen. Robert sat at the table sipping his coffee, pretending everything was normal. But inside, his legs ached with a heavy, relentless fatigue. After breakfast, Linda suggested a walk. Just 2 blocks, nothing strenuous. She wanted fresh air, and Robert, though reluctant, agreed. He bundled up in his old brown coat, pulled a wool cap over his thinning hair, and grabbed his cane. The first block wasn't so bad. The snow crunched beneath their boots. They waved to neighbors shoveling driveways. But halfway down the second block, it hit. A sudden searing cramp tore through Robert's left thigh, locking his muscles like a vice. His cane slipped, and he staggered forward, collapsing to one knee in the snow. His breath caught, his vision blurred. "Robert!" Linda shrieked, dropping her mittened hands onto his shoulders. "Talk to me, what's happening?" He tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. His chest tightened. His legs felt like dead weight, useless and foreign. He clutched at his thigh, groaning, I can't stand." A neighbor, hearing the commotion, rushed over. Together, they managed to hoist Robert back to his feet, but his body was trembling, drenched in sweat despite the freezing air. His skin had gone ashen. Linda didn't hesitate. She flagged down the neighbor's car, bundled Robert inside, and demanded they drive to the nearest ER. The emergency room at Mercy One Medical Center buzzed with Sunday chaos. Kids with fevers, a man nursing a broken arm, elderly women coughing into tissues. But for Robert, the world was a blur of fluorescent lights and worried voices. Nurses rushed him into triage. Blood pressure cuff tightened around his arm. Cold stethoscope pressed to his chest. Vials of blood drawn from his trembling veins. A young doctor, no older than Robert's eldest son, knelt beside him. "Mr. Miller, I need you to tell me, have you been feeling weakness in your legs for long?" Robert hesitated, ashamed. "Couple years now, cramps, tired all the time. I've been taking magnesium. Thought it would help." The doctor exchanged a glance with the nurse. "Magnesium, huh? Okay, we'll run some labs." Hours crawled by. Robert lay on the hospital bed staring at the ceiling tiles, listening to the beeping machines in neighboring rooms. Linda sat beside him, her hand wrapped around his. For the first time, he saw tears in her eyes. Finally, the doctor returned, clipboard in hand. He pulled the curtain for privacy and spoke in a low, serious voice. "Robert, your blood work shows something important. Your magnesium levels are fine. Actually, they're perfectly normal, but you're severely low in 2 other vitamins that are critical for muscle and nerve health." Robert frowned. "But everything I read said magnesium fixes cramps." "That's what the ads say." The doctor shook his head. "That's the problem. Marketing makes magnesium sound like a cure-all. But in reality, for people your age, the bigger culprits are vitamin B12 and vitamin D. Both are essential for muscle strength, balance, and nerve communication, and both drop drastically after 60. Linda leaned forward, her voice breaking. "So all this time, he's been getting weaker because of that?" "Yes," the doctor said gently. "Without enough B12, your nerves can't send signals properly. That's why your legs give out. Without enough vitamin D, your muscles don't repair at night. They actually break down faster. Magnesium can't fix those issues." Robert's throat tightened. All those nights of swallowing pills, all the money spent, all the hope he clung to, it felt like a cruel joke. He wasn't failing because of age alone. He was failing because his body had been starving for nutrients he didn't even know he needed. The doctor continued. If this deficiency isn't corrected, it can lead to permanent nerve damage, falls, fractures, loss of independence. But the good news is, it's not too late. With the right vitamins taken at the right time, your muscles can begin to repair while you sleep. You can regain strength. Robert closed his eyes. Relief and fear washed over him in equal measure. Relief that there was an explanation. Fear that he had waited too long. That night back home, Robert sat at the kitchen table staring at the row of pill bottles lined up neatly by the toaster. Magnesium, fish oil, multivitamins he barely touched. He felt betrayed by the advertisements, by the half-answers from doctors, by his own silence. But deep down, beneath the exhaustion, a spark lit. For the first time in years, he had hope. Not blind hope from a glossy magazine, but real hope, grounded in truth. Still, the question lingered in his mind like a drumbeat. If magnesium wasn't the answer, what exactly were these two vitamins that could rebuild his strength while he slept? Robert barely slept that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, its blades whirring in slow circles. His body still ached from the collapse on the snowy sidewalk, but what kept him awake wasn't the pain. It was the words echoing from the doctor's mouth. Your magnesium levels are fine. The problem is you're dangerously low in vitamin B12 and vitamin D. How could that be? For years he'd believed magnesium was the answer. Every magazine, every TV commercial, even friends at church swore by it. But now, in one hospital visit, the story flipped upside down. The kitchen smelled of freshly brewed coffee and toasted English muffins. Linda sat across from Robert, worry etched across her face. She gently pushed the local newspaper aside and leaned in. So, tell me again, what did the doctor say? Not magnesium? Robert sighed, rubbing his temples. No, he said my magnesium's normal. The real issue is B12 and vitamin D. He said without them, my muscles can't rebuild. My nerves can't send signals right. That's why my legs give out. Linda blinked. But how does that even happen? You eat meat. You drink milk. Don't you get vitamins from food? That's what I thought, Robert muttered. But the doctor explained it. After 60, your stomach makes less acid, so you don't absorb B12 from food the way you used to. And vitamin D, he said our bodies make it from sunlight, but around here? He gestured toward the frosted window where snowflakes swirled in the gray Iowa sky. We don't see the sun for months. Linda frowned, her eyes welling. So all this time, you were starving on the inside, and we didn't even know. Later that week, Robert and Linda sat once more in the doctor's office. The young physician pulled out a chart and began to explain, breaking the science down in simple terms. Think of your body like a house, the doctor began. The walls are your muscles. The electrical wiring inside the walls is your nerves. For the lights to turn on, the wiring needs to carry electricity. Robert nodded slowly. Vitamin B12 is like the insulation around those wires. Without insulation, the current shorts out. That's why your legs feel numb, weak, or shaky. Your brain sends the signal, stand, walk, climb, but the message fizzles before it gets to the muscle. Robert swallowed hard, suddenly remembering all the times his knees had buckled for no reason. And vitamin D, the doctor continued, is like the repair crew for your house. Every night while you sleep, your muscles are supposed to rebuild from the tiny tears they get during the day. But if you don't have vitamin D, the repair crew doesn't show up. Your muscles just stay broken down. That's why you wake up weaker instead of stronger. Linda leaned forward. So magnesium doesn't fix any of that? The doctor shook his head. Magnesium is important, but it's not the miracle it's marketed to be. Without B12 and D, magnesium is like buying nails when you don't even have lumber. It doesn't rebuild the house. The word stung. For 2 years, Robert had faithfully opened that green bottle of magnesium pills every night, convinced he was helping himself. Now he realized he had been treating the wrong problem. It felt like patching a leaking roof with duct tape while the foundation crumbled beneath him. He looked at the doctor and asked, almost in a whisper, "Is it too late? Can I get my strength back?" The doctor offered a reassuring smile. "It's not too late, Robert. That's the good news. If you start replenishing B12 and D, especially at night, your body will finally have the tools to repair. You may not run marathons, but you can regain stability, reduce the cramps, and rebuild muscle strength over the next several weeks." For the first time in months, Robert felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. On the drive home, Robert thought about all the men at church, all the neighbors, even his brother-in-law in Omaha, guys his age who complained about weak legs, nighttime cramps. and falling on the ice. How many of them were wasting money on magnesium just like he had? How many of them were silently struggling, thinking it was just old age, when in reality their bodies were starved for vitamins nobody bothered to talk about? He gripped the armrest of the car and turned to Linda. I wish somebody had told me this 5 years ago. Maybe I wouldn't have fallen behind my grandkids. Maybe I wouldn't be afraid of the stairs in my own home. Linda reached over, squeezing his hand. Well, now you know. And you can do something about it. That evening, Robert did something he hadn't done in months. He sat at the dinner table with a notebook and pen. On the first page, in shaky handwriting, he wrote, underneath, he listed the doctor's instructions. Begin vitamin B12 supplementation, preferably methylcobalamin. Easy to absorb. Add vitamin D3, taken at night, paired with a small snack for absorption. Continue light walking daily, even just to the end of the block. Sleep 7 to 8 hours to allow the body to repair. As he closed the notebook, Robert whispered, I'm not done yet. I've got too much life left, Linda smiled. That's the Robert I know. That night, lying in bed, Robert placed the new vitamins on the nightstand. Not in the kitchen, not buried in the drawer with forgotten supplements, but right where he could see them, right before sleep. He thought about what the doctor said. With the right vitamins, taken at night, your muscles can rebuild while you sleep. It sounded almost too good to be true. But then again, maybe truth had always been simple. It was just hidden beneath years of noise, marketing, and misunderstanding. As Robert closed his eyes, he felt something different. Not just fatigue, not just fear, but the quiet beginning of a second chance. Robert's first morning home after the revelation felt different. The air was crisp, sunlight breaking weakly through the frost on the window. On his nightstand sat 2 new bottles, vitamin B12 and vitamin D3. For once, they weren't hidden behind the half-used jars of magnesium. They were front and center, a small symbol of a fresh start. He unscrewed the first bottle, carefully placing a tiny B12 tablet under his tongue. It melted slowly, a faint berry taste on his tongue. Next, he swallowed a soft gel D3 capsule with a sip of warm water. Linda leaned in the doorway, watching him. Feels strange, doesn't it? Like you're finally feeding your body what it's been begging for. Robert smiled faintly. Yeah, like giving water to a plant that's been wilting for too long. The first few nights, Robert didn't notice much. His legs still cramped, and walking up the stairs left him winded. But he kept at it. B12 under the tongue, D3 with a small evening snack. On the 7th night, something changed. He woke at 2 a.m., expecting the usual stabbing ache in his calves. But instead of pain, he felt calm warmth, no cramps, no twitching, just silence. In the morning, he told Linda, eyes wide with surprise. It's the first night in months I didn't wake up from pain. She smiled, squeezing his arm. That's your body thanking you, Robert. It's repairing. Encouraged, Robert decided to test himself. After Sunday service, instead of driving straight home, he and Linda stopped by the city park. The paved walking trail stretched along the Des Moines River, bare trees swaying in the winter wind. Just a short loop, he told himself, gripping Linda's hand for balance. The first steps were shaky, his knees wobbling, but after a few minutes he noticed something. His legs didn't feel like dead weight. His stride lengthened, his balance steadier. Halfway around the loop, Linda looked at him with astonishment. You're walking faster than last month. Do you feel it? Robert nodded, breathing hard but smiling. Yeah, it's like my legs are waking up again. For the first time in years, he finished the loop without having to sit down. Another unexpected change came 2 weeks in. Sleep. Robert had spent years tossing and turning, often wide awake at 3 a.m., but now, after taking his vitamins at night, he drifted into deeper rest. The doctor had explained it. B12 calms nerve firing, and D3 regulates nighttime repair hormones. But Robert didn't need the science to appreciate it. One morning, he slept until the alarm clock rang at 7:30. He turned to Linda, amazed. I can't remember the last time I slept through the night. Her eyes softened. I can. It was before all this started. You used to snore so loud I'd nudge you awake. They both laughed, the sound light and hopeful. By the 3rd week, Linda noticed something subtle. Robert no longer grunted in pain every time he stood from his recliner. His posture looked taller. He even reached down to tie his own shoes, something he hadn't dared in months. One Saturday morning, His grandson Tyler came to visit. The 8-year-old ran into the living room with his toy cars, giggling. "Grandpa, chase me," Tyler shouted, dashing toward the hallway. Robert froze. Just weeks ago, those words would have filled him with dread. He would have made excuses. Grandpa's too tired, or not today. But this time, he rose slowly, steadied himself on the armrest, and shuffled after Tyler. He wasn't fast. His knees ached, but he made it down the hallway, chuckling breathlessly as Tyler zoomed back. When he sat down again, Linda's eyes shimmered with tears. "That's the first time you've played chase in over a year." Robert wiped sweat from his forehead, his heart swelling. "I almost felt like myself again." At his 1-month follow-up, Robert returned to the clinic. The nurse checked his balance with a simple test. Stand with feet together, eyes closed, arms out. Last time he'd nearly toppled over in seconds. This time he held steady. "Much better," the nurse said, smiling. "Your reaction time is sharper." "Have you noticed fewer cramps?" Robert grinned. "I sleep better. I can walk longer. Even my grandson noticed." The doctor nodded, explaining gently. "That's because the B12 is restoring nerve insulation, and the D3 is fueling muscle protein repair. It's not overnight magic. It's biology catching up after years of deficiency." For once, Robert didn't feel like a frail old man in a clinic. He felt like someone reclaiming his body. Back at home, Robert's recovery wasn't dramatic like a movie montage. It was quiet, built on ordinary moments. Carrying groceries without wobbling, standing in the kitchen long enough to stir a pot of chili, sleeping through the night without pain jolting him awake, each small victory stacked like bricks, slowly rebuilding the house the doctor had described, the house of his body. Linda began keeping a journal of his progress. On one page she wrote, Week 1, fewer nighttime cramps. Week 2, walked half a mile at the park. Week 3, slept 7 hours straight. Week 4, played with Tyler. When Robert read it, his eyes misted. "It's proof, Linda, I'm getting stronger." One evening, after their vitamins and a cup of chamomile tea, Robert sat by the fireplace with Linda. Flames flickered. Shadows dancing on the wall. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I used to think aging meant giving up piece by piece, strength, balance, independence. But now I see, sometimes it's not age. Sometimes it's just missing what your body needs." Linda nodded, her voice soft. "And sometimes it takes falling to realize you don't have to keep falling." Robert reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm not wasting another dollar on the wrong pills. No more magnesium hype. From now on, I'm giving my body what it really needs, so I can walk beside you as long as God lets me." Linda smiled, tears glistening in the firelight. "That's all I ever wanted." And with that quiet vow, Robert's resolution was set, not just to rebuild his muscles, but to rebuild his life, one night, one step, one vitamin at a time.